Hey you beautiful people! Last time we built this cute little Takom Type 94 and now it's time to give it some color. I decided to go with the simple green livery that's featured on the box art, but I will give it some effects that make it less boring and I will use the huge space that 16 scale makes possible. It's a good idea to prime your model kits, but sometimes you can get away with just spraying on some paint and sealing it with varnish. Luckily, AK Interactive's rear color line is surprisingly sturdy and adheres well to plastic, but I highly advise you to prime model kits if you are going to use acrylics instead. As you can see, I used some clips to have a handle during airbrushing the kit. Such simple solutions work well and minimize the possibilities of you touching wet paint. Of course, you can buy some amazing, albeit expensive rigs just for these kind of jobs too. Do whatever works for you. The base tone for this little tongue is AK's protective 4BO. This may look too dark for now, but bear with me. This is just the base for the following step, which will pull the color scheme together and will make the model pop. A single coat of this paint was enough. I just made sure I got even coverage everywhere on the model. I highly recommend a good quality airbrush even for these base coating applications, since they will provide better and more even coverage. I'm using a Fengda BD180. It was around 30 euros a few years back, an absolute steal compared to some more renowned brands. The turret got the same paint of course, I just made sure to spray it from below as well, since the applied putty makes the surface more textured and it would look awful if there would be any grey spots on such visible part. The exhaust cover mesh got some special treatment as I don't have metal primer yet. Since it's made out of brass, it reacts with metal track varnishing fluid. The whole point is to make the paint stick to the surface, and raw brass is not good at that. I'm using a little paper cup to not mess up furniture and go to town with a brush, making sure to reach every little nook and cranny of the mesh. After about 5 minutes it's time to rinse off the excess fluid and let the mesh dry. I'm just using tap water to do so. Now to the highlight of this paint job. The highlight. I will see myself out. My idea was to elevate a boring single-tone camo somehow, and I remembered painting a tiger one. It looked way cooler with the Dunkelgelb base tone and simple highlights than with the green and brown color added, so the simple green color scheme just screams for some pseudo Zenithal highlight paint job. As for the color, I mixed some AK Pale Grey to the 4BO until it was light enough but not yet grey. For a visual example on how to paint such a color scheme, I will use the turret as it's relatively simple and doesn't need too much creativity to decide which part should be lighter. Obviously, the high part of the sides is hit by more light and should therefore be a lighter tone. Same goes for the hatches on the side. The hatch on the top has a nice round shape, so I decided to make the round part more distinguished and highlighted that. Most of the panels of the hull are also highlighted on the rear side. During the assembly I managed to keep the wheels in a movable position, which immensely helps painting the rubber parts. I'm using acrylic rubber tires paint from AK applied with a brush. I never use black for rubber parts as most sorts of rubber have a greyish hue and colors get warped with scaling down, so model kits need to be painted a bit lighter than the original vehicles. The shovel and the pickaxe also got painted with the rubber tires paint, but for a different reason. The grey tone makes for an excellent base for weathered steel and iron surfaces later on. Some overpaint on the handles is also fine at this point as the wood still needs to be painted. The 7.7mm gun and its shroud also get the same rubber tire paint, but instead of rust we'll get some metal polish later on. This grey paint is really versatile. The wooden handles of the shovel and pickaxe get the German dark yellow base tone from Mang, also in acrylic form. You can also use a darker base tone and paint the grain with a lighter color, it all depends on the species of tree used to create the handles. The grain texture was created with a 00 brush and AK's rusty tracks. Some wood knots and not so steady hands makes the grain texture more realistic. The random lines and curves create an illusion of wood grain, where perfect straight lines would look natural and out of place. The inside of the headlight was painted with Vallejo silver color. I tried to use the lightest metal color I had on hand, as the inner surface of lights needs to reflect light well in order to be useful, which translates to highly reflective and light metal tones. One can also paint the upper side in a slightly different metal tone, as there's a lot of mirroring going on inside the lamp. But I leave these paint jobs to figure painters who can pull off non-metallic metal in their sleep. Another highlight of the Type 94 is the little star on the front of the hull. To make it pop, I decided to paint it in a light brass color, which is actually a gold tone from Citadel called Liberator Gold. The exhaust pipe and the thing that looks like a catalysator were painted with a mix of AK's rubber tires and Vallejo Stonewall Grey. This light grey will also be just the base tone for further weathering and only looks weird temporarily. To further enhance the upcoming rust weathering, I apply a pure Stonewall Grey like I would light chipping. I use a small brush to stipple it on a larger surface on the exhaust. This will give some contrast and visual interest on the rusty surface later on. The next step is to apply some dark spots as well, so I use the same small brush to add mixed Choco Brown on the inside of some light grey chips. These three colors will make the rusty surface look interesting and realistic at the same time. If you need to gather some reference photos to decide what tones you should use, just take some photos of the exhaust of your car. I guarantee you there will be interesting textures and color tones if your car is not brand new. Now I apply some Rosetta Green from Ammo on spots where the green color has some residues as places near the exhaust attachment and the under part of the exhaust. With some rust washes added later, it will look like it's one weathered unit and not some assortment of completely different colors. The mesh got the same Rosetta Green treatment with a fine brush, and I diluted it a bit more to avoid paint getting trapped in the holes. I concentrate most of the green paint on the edges and the lower part of the mesh as it would occur in real life. The varnishing treated mesh with this green applied already looks fine in my opinion, but some rust washes will give it even more detail later on. The rear combo light was painted in Vallejo silver color earlier to create a base for the now applied translucent red paint, which is called Coagulated Blood and is an effect paint from Green Stuff World. It's a bit too cloggy for this application, but still works and looks better than just leaving the lamp green or silver. All the rivets and small outstanding parts were highlighted with mixed Rosetta Green to make those details stand out. I also started to chip the turret, but decided to leave the chipping for the weathering phase this time just to experiment a little bit. The rubber tracks are god-awful from what I can tell so far, but I already have an idea on how to assemble them in a decent manner. First I have to paint them though, so here goes the base tone, which is sprayed on thickly with the airbrush. I used AK Interactive's dark gray, and the reason I didn't thin them as much as usual is that I need a really matte finish. Let's move on to varnishing the whole paint job to protect it from the upcoming weathering and give the whole tankette a metallic sheen. Not all parts need the sheen, therefore I use masking putty to protect the exhaust parts to leave them in a matte finish. I use AK's satin varnish as it always delivers a nice finish if diluted in the correct concentration, which usually means to drown it in a lot of thinner. From then on it's just a matter of using the airbrush in a steady manner and getting even coverage from the whole model. The masking putty can easily be removed after coating the model in varnish, and the stuff can be reused again. The headlight is still missing its glass cover, so let's attach that. Since clear plastic gets foggy if you use CEA glue or modeling cement, I just used PVA glue and applied it with my glorious homemade glue applicator. Then I just used tweezers to push the lens in its place and let it dry. Since this is a capture tank, I need to apply the Chinese decals that came with the kit. The decals have a good consistency and look very detailed. They have some overlap on the edges that need a bit of aftercare with the hobby blade. Anyway, I used a decal setting solution from MIG Productions to let the decals adhere to the textured surface. The decals can be placed in the right position with tweezers while the surface is wet. Once in place, I apply even more setting solution to make the decal adhere to the surface even more and push the decal in with a cotton swab. To seal the whole deal, I use some more satin varnish. This makes sure the decal stays on the kit and also takes care of the silvering. And that's it for today. The Type 94 is fully painted up and ready for weathering. Being in 16 scale, the kit has a lot of detail and surface for weathering opportunities, so I'm pretty stoked on starting the weathering on this thing. The green color is also great canvas for mud and rust effects, so this will be a lot of fun. If you like this video, write to us and look up our other stuff on the shown outlets. Thanks for watching and keep us in your sights.